Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dawn Dev Podcast. I am your host, Chad Spangler, here with our head developer, John Grady. And today we're going to be talking about what we're working on. Somber Studios is in a bit of a transition period because we've released our first game. We have not released our second game. So it's kind of an interesting time to talk about what we're up to. It's a time where we're obviously not abandoning our first game. We've released it, like we can sell it now. Like that should be a huge part of our efforts. But at the same time, we can't just do that. We got to think about the future. So should be an interesting topic, especially for anyone who is between games or kind of, working on various things all at once. When your objective is not 100% straightforward, this one thing, things can get a little bit muddy. So hopefully we can learn from each other in this episode on that. And the first thing I want to talk about is right now, I'm really glad that we have multiple people. I had this conversation in a Discord channel the other day. They're like, how many people do you have on your team? And I said 5 officially. 6, my fiance is definitely helping with the business side, but 5 officially. And they're like, oh, that must, be good for development and stuff like that, but must be a pain when it comes to payday. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And I shared a meme, just kind of making a joke. But I'm glad right now that we have more than one person, because I'm the marketing guy. I can focus on selling the game that we have released, while at the same time our company can start making our next game. So I want to ask you an interesting question, John. Where would you be right now if you were solo, 100% on your own?
Well, first, I probably would have killed Intrusion Protocol back in December. I believe we had a discussion where, I wanted to move on and to apply all the new things I'd learned on something different. And you all talked me out of that, basically on the premise that no, we need to actually release a game and finish a game, and there's a lot to be learned from marketing and selling a game, and if you finish the game, you're going to learn a lot more for that next project, and that next project will be even bigger and cooler than if you just kill this now and start on another project and don't release a game.
I think that was the right path to take.
In the middle, I guess my answer is I would probably be in the middle of game 5 with game 4 having never been released.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. You would have ditched Intrusion Protocol, started working on game 2, learned a bunch right off the bat from game 2, and went, oh no, this game 3's better, and then done that a few more times, and it's probably pretty accurate. So right now, I, as the marketing person, will talk about kind of the end the thing that's coming is closer to an end than the thing we're starting first, and that's Intrusion Protocol. I am still marketing that pretty heavily, of working on like kind of opening new avenues to market to people, kind of discovering what works, what doesn't work, getting a real handle on where I should be concentrating my efforts, and learning a lot about what I'm going to have to do in the future for new games. And I've already learned that we are in such a better spot than we were when we started, launching for, like, especially from Greenlight. We have so much more experience, even though it's only been a few months, with, what works, what doesn't work, what connects with people, what avenues you shouldn't even go for altogether. And a lot of this is going to be covered in our currently running blog series on indie game marketing. If you want to check that out at somberdawnstudios.com/blog. We'll probably upload a new blog post every week. And that's another thing I'm working on heavily, is the podcast and blog post, because that has been generating not a ton of sales for us, but a lot of exposure and a lot of traffic. And the main thing you have to keep in mind with any sort of like content, be it blog posts, podcasts, YouTube videos, all the above, is consistency. And that's something that I have struggled to get down, especially with the blog posts. The podcasts do not take that much work as of right now to record and put up. Those are fairly straightforward. The blogs, however, that, you have to be careful about what you write. You have to like use, the right images. There's a lot more work involved with the blog than the podcast, and that's a main thing I'm trying to do. And I think the idea of having a blog series going on right now is really helping because one kind of feeds off of the other. And so what I'm trying to do right now as far as the blog is write the blog series and schedule it out ahead of time to keep a degree of consistency. Because when we do release a blog post, we get quite a bit of traffic on our website. It's a nice bump, but we just have to keep doing that on a regular basis. And that's the idea with a lot of marketing, and social media is another one you have to be consistent with. And some weeks I get, we stated before, we all have jobs. Some weeks I get really, really busy at work, really busy after work, and like some social media posts just don't get scheduled. And I've been doing a lot better on that, but sometimes scheduling ahead is the main thing I'm working on as far as content creation for the studio goes. And as far as marketing goes, finding the things that work, playing to our strengths already. Twitch is just a huge thing for all of our efforts right now. It's resulted in so much more sales, so much more exposure, so much more relationships to people that we could potentially work with in the future. Connecting with a lot of people, like Twitch has been a big thing, and we're kind of doubling and tripling down on Twitch right now, as well as continuing our other efforts. Working on keeping the email list consistently updated. We had a lot of back and forth within my own head, actually, about if we were going to go with MailChimp or kind of keep it very simple and go with a Google Sheets kind of mailing list. And I had a big, we had our MailChimp set up, and I had a big second thought, because MailChimp, anyone that signs up, they have to go through a confirmation email to join your mailing list. And I thought like, oh man, that's going to result in so many people just forgetting about it, not confirming, not joining the mailing list, and never seeing a thing that we post ever again. And that really got to me. I was like, but then, I read more on it, and I read MailChimp's take on it, like why they do that. They're like, it's better for conversion rates in the long run. When people confirm that they're, wanting to join an email list, they're more likely to read your emails. They're more likely to engage. And I'm like, that makes sense. Also, at Pixel Pop, we learned quite a bit of legal stuff as far as, maintaining a mailing list and your marketing and stuff like that. And one of the things, we learned is that it's very, very, very essential to have a unsubscribe to this email list in your emails. And that's something that is on by default in MailChimp, super easy to do. So
yeah, I'm super glad we had not sent any emails out
right.
until that point.
Well, we actually acquired most of our new email subs at Pixel Pop. Which we were just talking before starting recording. I was worried because we did a giveaway at Pixel Pop of several copies of Intrusion Protocol, and we did that by having people sign up for the mailing list, and anyone that signed up that day would be eligible to win, and then we just drew and sent people, oh, you won emails, right? And I was worried that the second we sent out our first email with them actually added to the actual email list, like not a winning, they were just going to be like, oh, I didn't win, I don't care, unsubscribe. That was my fear. Thankfully, nobody has done that so far. That's super awesome. I had a few more people join, which I'm glad to see that's working. So, that was a little bit too late on our part, and I think that's something anyone listening that is making games or trying to market games should learn from us is, have your mailing list stuff sorted out. I highly recommend using MailChimp, even though people do have to confirm to be on it. I think it's going to be a lot better in the long run. Also, the first email I sent out was far more of a beautiful email thanks to their templates that I could have made in, an email client. Well, I could have made it, but it would have taken a lot more work. And we are not paid or affiliated with MailChimp at all. I'm just saying that I think that is the better way to go than just putting them in a spreadsheet. There's a lot more features. You can get some at least basic analytics even from the free MailChimp. So finally got that sorted out. Took me way too long, and I'll admit that. But, so working on email list, working on content to send to that email list, marketing intrusion protocol, pretty full plate. I've kind of been dominating the conversation so far because, we've just been talking about, what we're doing. And, I was talking about the intrusion protocol but we are also working on our future. This is the advantage of having multiple people is we can do both of these things and not, be sidetracked by one or the other. Like we can each have our focus. So what are we working on as far as future endeavor goes? We're not gonna. This isn't an official announcement, so but we can tell you, what we're working on. So what are we working on, Grady?
All right. Well, I mean, a few things. First off, I mean, just to be upfront, Intrusion Protocol sales have not been like stellar,
No.
to put it mildly. So we do have a large quality of life patch coming just to kind of clean up some bugs and things. If you play and have noticed anything wonky or misbehaving, send us an email and we'll try and get it into that patch. But as far as extra content, it became very clear to us that unless sales pick up, we need to make Intrusion Protocol a little more quality of life and then rather rapidly move on to our next project in terms of actual content.
Right.
So yeah, we're working on a couple things right now. We're working on a game to release relatively quickly for the company. And then we're working in the back end much more heavily on the universe and lore of a setting we've had for probably 6 years that we've used for various D&D campaigns and some other stuff. And I'll get into that a little later into the podcast. But for right now, let's focus a little more on the actual, pixels as they were.
Mm-hmm.
And that is our puzzle game. We went to Intrusion Protocol, not Intrusion Protocol. We went to Pixel Pop with the intent that after that weekend, we had everybody together almost. One of our members couldn't make it. After that weekend, we would have a meeting and kind of determine, okay, what was game 2 going to be? And I had been done with Intrusion Protocol for a little while, and everybody was like, well, we're just going to take the month off until after Pixel Pop. Well, for you normal people who aren't insane, you can take the month off. For those of us who lay in bed and just want to get out of bed and go engineer something, we have to build prototypes. And so I showed up to the meeting with a puzzle game prototype, and I'm like, hey, I think we can make this in 3 to 6 months pretty cheaply. And it's fun and it's interesting, and I've hardly added anything to it. It'll be much more fun and much more interesting once we actually do some pre-production and some proper production and add stuff to it. And so that's kind of what we've been working on since Pixel Pop, has been patching up Intrusion Protocol and working on this puzzle game, which I'm quite happy to say is already nearly at feature completion in terms of gameplay. Now, in terms of actually, the bells and whistles and the effects and the menus and all that work still has to be done. But in terms of gameplay, we're pretty close to being done, which I'm quite happy with.
Yeah, I played it. It works.
Now, I mean, there's a fair bit of debugging that will need to be done, but I've done a lot of that along the way, and I'm certain my level design / QA guy for Intrusion Protocol will make me eat these words, but I'm going to go ahead and say them, Josh. I dare you to find a bug in the base gameplay of this puzzle game right now.
Challenge accepted.
Very, very hard to squish them all as they showed up. But aside from that, we've been working in the background. We knew we wanted a quick project, just so that people could kind of work on something while we were still in a solid marketing push on Intrusion Protocol. We really didn't know what we were doing, really didn't do our due diligence on marketing for Intrusion Protocol.
Which I'd like to say is kind of why, even though Intrusion Protocol sales, like you said, haven't been the best, but I still don't take that as Intrusion Protocol's a failure. I think it was a massive success in terms of, learning and establishing what we need to do for our next game. And that was kind of my goal from the onset is, this I know this one's going to be rough because we haven't done this before.
Yeah,
We've
I mean,
so
Intrusion Protocol met its key goal,
right.
which was for us to
Release
release
a quality game.
fun, good game quickly and learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And we're
and
still
so
learning from it.
we realize you only get one launch.
Mm-hmm.
That said, having really kind of botched that launch in terms of our marketing, we are trying to do some due diligence on it after the fact. And even if we can't make a lot of money from Intrusion Protocol, we'd like people to be able to play it and enjoy it and have it make some kind of impact on people. And I think it's doing that a little bit. It has started to pick up a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But so while we were doing that, and while that still had a fair bit of our attention, we wanted to be able to make something with fewer members of the team quickly and in the background. And that's kind of what this puzzle game is. I don't want it to make it seem like it's a small or half done thing. Our other key objective with it is to make it more feature complete than Intrusion Protocol was. We are going to try and localize this thing into as many languages as we can, for example. It's a puzzle game. Its only real text is in the menus and in the score and that kind of stuff. So it seemed like the ideal candidate for our first localization.
Absolutely.
So we actually, despite the fact that it's our reason for making this specific game is that we think we can make it faster than we made Intrusion Protocol. We also think that we can make it better than Intrusion Protocol in that time. They're very different games, so better is a little subjective, but in terms of polish, we think it'll be a better game. And while that's going on, we're devoting at least some of our time, and this will increase the closer this puzzle game gets to its launch. We will increase how much time is going to this other project, which is for another game that we're not really ready to talk about because there is no code for this game. There is no art base for this game. It exists only in as far as its lore and its universe.
It is in pre-production.
Yes. Myself and our lead artist have been working on this universe for 5 or 6 years. We ran some D&D campaigns on it in college, and it's a sci-fi setting. I don't want to say much more than that about it, but we're kind of hoping it becomes our first real revisitable intellectual property. Intrusion Protocol is kind of very generic, and it's like it's a hacker space, and it could be in our real world, it could be in another world. It's not super defined. Same thing with the puzzle game. It's a puzzle game. You could make a sequel maybe at some point to either of these two games, but they don't have a universe and an essence in the way that more story-driven games do. And that's kind of the goal for this third game, is to deliver something that's much more its own thing, that could have a fan base beyond just the gameplay, and into the characters and the lore and the setting and things. And so that's kind of all I want to say about that in particular.
So I think the takeaway from that is, when you're between games and you want to make something that is quite ambitious, that might even span over a lot of games, if you're a small company, you have to do something in the meantime. You can't, we just released our first game, and we can't go directly from releasing our first small scope, very, very limited, potential game, to an all-out universe defining endeavor. We have to do something in the meantime if we want to have a sustainable business model. You can't, and that's how large game studios work too. You can't just make a game, sell the game, make the game. You have to be doing all of this at once. You have to have something to sell in order to bring in the revenue to allow you to develop, to keep it's never you don't do those things in chunks, right? They're not separate. And
Yeah,
that's
I don't want to make it seem like Puzzle Game is only being made because we need something in the interim. The idea for Puzzle Game absolutely came about before the idea for Space Game.
right.
Space
And
Game was kind of brought up in the meeting about the puzzle game, where we're like, okay, this prototype exists, but this game isn't going to take the full team, and it's not going to take that long to make, and we probably ought to talk about what the next game after it's going to be, if it's going to be such a short development cycle on it.
right.
Puzzle game absolutely stands on its own merits. I made it because I thought it was a fun idea, and I really do love playing it. To the point where I have had to inform my wife to just occasionally, if I'm playing the game, ask me if I'm testing a new feature or if I'm just playing our prototype. The answer is normally I'm just playing our prototype and need to get back to work.
Well, and I think it's important, like an important part of that, even though the puzzle game is going to be sort of a quick game by game standards, that we're making it specifically because we can make it quickly without sacrificing quality. And that second part is really important because, you see some game developers just cranking out these crap titles because they're quick. But, this we like this puzzle game because it's a good candidate to do quickly and have a degree of quality to it.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say we've had a couple people make some comments about this or that on Intrusion Protocol and its quality. And what I want to say on that is the key thing with Intrusion Protocol. Like I said, we're working to improve some quality of life stuff, and it is a very good game. We've had very few complaints about it. But
Oh, the people who were racing it the other night loved it. So
there have been a few complaints with some menu stuff, and like we don't properly support 4K with it, which was just kind of me going through the resolution scalings and looking at market shares at the time, and I'm like, okay, well, 4K has like no market share, and a lot of AAA games aren't even supporting 4K yet when we were doing it, and well, now it's a few months later, and the market share has gone up, and AAA games have gotten their support up there, and so it's something I'll probably have to add in the patch, but that may be a note to take away for the future is don't think about the state of the market when you're making your game, and your market share. Maybe look about what the market might look like shortly after you release your game.
right, yeah,
But many of those things weren't necessarily a time or care issue with Intrusion Protocol.
mm-hmm.
It really was our first game. And there are a lot of things that are done one way or another because it was our first game, and because we didn't know a better way to do them, or we baked something in early on and we'd have to change the entire game to make a certain change one way or the other. And so that's one thing just to bear in mind in general is with Intrusion Protocol, we're going to make what changes we can to improve people's quality of life with it, and make them enjoy it more than they already have.
Mm-hmm.
But there is only so much that we can do with it being our first game. There are some engineering limitations.
Right.
Exactly what we can change without having the whole thing fall apart.
Right. And I'm probably annoying the crap out of you because I'm constantly coming to you with dumb ideas like, hey, I think this might be an easy way to make this game way harder. And we don't necessarily need to. It's not like an immediate need, but it's just something to be like, oh, maybe we'll implement this in the future if we have time.
I will say its puzzle game has been so wonderful in reaffirming just how much my skill has increased between projects. I'm just like, it's so easy to add things to puzzle game.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to change things. About the only thing that is difficult to change in puzzle game is the core collision engine.
Right.
Everything else is just I can add new types of things and new colors of things, and I can make things dynamically change, and all just super easy. And it's just, I guess that's my thank you to you and Will, is like, thanks for making us finish Intrusion Protocol, because
No problem.
by the end of Intrusion Protocol, it became so hard to make certain changes
Yeah.
that I really, setting into this project, I'm like, okay, I need to build this in a way where if something needs to be changed, the whole house isn't going to come down. Where as often as possible, I don't have to tell my level designer, we can't do that. You're talking about rebuilding the whole game to make that happen.
Right. And another thing that this has kind of been like, I want to talk about this thing because we this is something that I have worked on, and it's a different puzzle game. It has been put on the back burner for quite a while, just because marketing efforts for Intrusion Protocol have taken heavy precedence for good reason. And I want to say that that's okay. Like, I haven't worked on it in like over 2 months, but for good reason. Sometimes it's you may think like, oh, you haven't worked on your specific game, since we're working on multiple things right now in over 2 months. Like, that's whatever you've been doing is not worth it because you're not working on your game. Well, some things are okay to put on the back burner and allow other priorities to take precedence. Like, I still think that this could totally be a game and might be a game in the future, but it's when you have bigger fish to fry, you're working in the context of a business, of a thing where there's a lot of moving parts, and it's okay to put some things on the back burner.
Yeah,
And
especially you have to consider your situation. Full disclosure here. At the moment, we have the equipment and the licensing to export onto Steam on Windows and Linux. We don't have the setup for phone. Phone is probably the first thing we can do. Financially, it's just a lot cheaper to get into that.
right, and I think it's going to be my project specifically is going to be a better game when we have those resources and we don't have to worry about because you're right in that it's made for mobile. It is a mobile game. Like, it is just that is just definitely the best platform it's going to perform on, as far as like both from a marketing perspective and from just a pure game performance. So, it's all right to, when you have projects that start out and that you're working on, and that you realize that you have some bottlenecks that really need to probably be conquered first. It's all right to put that to the side and do other stuff. It doesn't mean you've abandoned it. It doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. And, while all that other stuff is happening, you might come up with ideas that make the game even better. So, and so that's just my message, is when you're working on stuff with a lot of moving parts, it's okay to, you know, it's okay to prioritize certain things, and you shouldn't feel like those things are just dead in the water or not going to happen or a failure. They're just not a priority right now, and that is perfectly acceptable. So, another thing I've kind of been working on, because like it's been the last couple weeks for me have been frantic trying to get that consistency down. Just the blog, the podcast, setting stuff up, doing my normal marketing efforts, working my full time job. It's been jam packed. But since I've been kind of getting into that groove, doing my stuff more efficiently, within the past week, I've been like, I want to work. Like, one of our biggest bottlenecks that we're not afraid to admit it is art. We don't have the means right now to hire super professional artists. We're doing this, on our own, and I kind of want to be like, hey, I'm gonna start, when I do have a little free time from not neglecting my other stuff, doodling, doing art, like trying to get decent at some kind of art style, and I'm gonna try to focus on something that's not pixel art, because as much as I like pixel art, you guys are on that. That's that's you guys' thing. Like you can already do that, and I don't want to keep us as a company in a box with just that art style. And I'm no artist. Like I there's a reason I haven't even considered starting doing art up until this point, is because like I have never been an artist. I've definitely been a graphic designer, but as far as like original like sketch artwork, I've always considered myself to be garbage. And but that's because I've never really tried and worked on it. Like you can learn to do that. And I'm not gonna be like I'm gonna have so many crappy. If you be entertained by our Twitter when I make a really crappy rudimentary sketch that a fourth grader could do better. Like follow our Twitter and be entertained by those as they come, because I'll put them on Twitter and be like, look at this piece of crap I made. But the goal is to be incrementally better every time, just like with programming and stuff like that. You got to iterate. Yeah, it's like I remember hearing an interview with Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters one time, and he's talking about just bands and like how he started and the journey or whatever, and he's just like, you're gonna suck for a while, but like you keep doing it and you suck less, and then you get good. Like and I think personally overall on that metric, we're ahead of the curve, because we suck a lot less than we could at this point in time with doing this for less than a year. Like I feel like we suck a lot less than we could suck. I think we've covered pretty well what we've been doing. This we've we're kind of split right now. We're in a transition period and working through it. So we're, as far as marketing and my side of the aisle goes, working on marketing Intrusion Protocol, doing better and better every day. It's definitely learning a lot, looking up good stuff. Blog and podcast, keeping the content creation coming. So I have some stuff to send to the mailing list. We're not just constantly spamming just buy Intrusion Protocol, buy Intrusion Protocol, buy Intrusion Protocol. Oh, by the way, you guys should buy Intrusion Protocol. But so we have a variety of stuff to show to people, so we can garner a following, get people to pay attention to what we're doing. And then on the production side of things, we are working on a puzzle game and working on kind of lore and a universe to have future games in. So definitely working on multiple things at once. So that's what we're up to. That concludes this episode of Dawn Dev Podcast. Let us know what you think. If you think we should be working on something else, or if we're missing something, let us know in the comments. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. Tell us what you're working on. We love to hear from other game developers as well. So until next time, this is your host, Chad Spangler, and your lead dev. I always hesitate on that. I always want to say lead like level designer, and that's not you. That's not what you do. So until next time, we're Somber Dawn Studios. This has been the Dawn Dev Podcast, and we will see you later.